Welcome. My name is Patrick Campbell at BMC Software, and we're going to talk about TrueSight Pulse, the heartbeat of digital enterprise management. In this presentation, we'll have a look at the overview, capabilities, architecture, features, and then we'll end with a demo. And for this first slide, this is just a quick overview of the way that we're pitching this solution. We're having this SaaS-based solution kind of completes our TrueSight portfolio for monitoring applications and infrastructure. Key points here are that it's SaaS-based, so it's quick to get started, where you can collect and monitor infrastructure in just minutes to set up. The idea is that when you have continuous software delivery and you need a view of the performance quickly, having that second-by-second granularity is going to help you find and fix issues before your end users even notice. Let's take a quick overview, look at the capabilities. We have this diagram here that shows that the TrueSight Pulse solution does, you can view the metrics on mobile. It basically is a very simple dashboard, metric display, and reporting solution. So you'll have that second-by-second visibility with real-time alerting. It integrates with collaboration software for development teams such as HipChat or OpsGenie, and it also can do event monitoring by sending with an action, an endpoint post to an event management system. And in this diagram, what you see is that in addition to managing your infrastructure second by second, it also integrates with these platforms for delivering applications. So if you have SAP, MongoDB, MySQL, those kinds of platforms, this integrates directly with them and provides you those metrics on top of the second by second system metrics of your meter. It also integrates quickly with your Chef and Puppet automation tools. Many teams will use those as they're rolling out application, they want to quickly deploy those applications, but alongside that, the meters for the collection of the second-by-second visibility with TrueSight Pulse. It does integrate with collaboration tools like HipChat, Campfire, PagerDuty, and what happens is you just provide the API token for TrueSight Pulse, and you automatically have that integration so that not everyone on your team has to be viewing the TrueSight Pulse data because they're going to be updated with the critical events in these collaborative software solutions. And then, of course, with Amazon AWS, there are many CloudWatch metrics that are available. TrueSight Pulse just integrates it very easily right out of the box, just like any other solution, so that you can get the 5-minute granularity by default for free from Amazon, or you can pay extra to Amazon to have that 1-minute visibility. So we find that some customers will start out with just getting the visibility of their infrastructure in the Amazon cloud, and then whenever they need to gear up and fine-tune some infrastructure that's hosting their apps with more attention, then they can install the TrueSight meters. And we'll explain a little bit more about how that works. For the architecture, we're just going to go through a couple of simple slides to give you a sense of the main components. So of course, when you begin, you're going to have the SaaS hosting solution that you purchase, and then you'll have end users that can be viewing the reports, or also administrators of the solution. And then once you get started, you install a meter on each of your OSs. One meter, we have support for all the major vendors and OSs out there, Linux and Ubuntu, Red Hat, Windows Server, all of those hosts are supported for our meters. And then you can automate the deployment of those meters as you're rolling out applications or changes in your network and you want to monitor certain infrastructure. And then there's the plugins. And what they do is they attach to the meter. You can have one or more plugins per meter, and those are those platforms like MySQL or MongoDB, and those platforms integrate directly. There you've got your host, your meters, your plugins, automation, and this next piece is the alarms. So for each meter, you can set thresholds on the metrics that you're measuring, and one or more alarms can be set off for each meter. And then associated with those meters would be then what we call actions. And actions by default mean that when an alarm occurs, an email is immediately sent to the subscription person for the TrueSight Pulse solution, And then you can have as many people get those emails, but the most value you can have in terms of alarms is to integrate with whatever platforms you're using so that all the users on a team would get that notification. It could be in the form of a text message, it could be a phone call or an email, and you can also take you right to the time of the alert with a quick link back to the TrueSight Pulse dashboard. All right, so let's jump into the features just a little bit here, and we want to talk to them in terms of their use cases. So there's really two main use cases. One use case, and we just kind of discussed that a little bit earlier, is that real-time insight, that second-by-second granularity, where you're going to find issues before end users notice, and it's kind of a per-host monitoring solution. And then the second case is the AWS solution, so that you have that high-level CloudWatch visibility, and then as needed, you take the deep dive with the second-by-second granularity in use case one. So to get started with use case one, all you need to do is install a meter on your Windows boxes. Copy this API token and specify it during the Windows installation. And for Linux, it's even easier. In your Linux platform, you can just see this. There's a line of code that you just paste into your command line and just click return, and it's up and running in seconds. And there's the default dashboard for your server health. This automatically gets populated. It's out of the box. It shows a time series graph of your major system metrics that you want to keep track of and be alerted on. You have an ultra granular view that you can zoom into at any time. So each one of those panels has the ability to zoom in, and then you can validate any service disruptions. The idea here is you're going to have, by default, 30 days worth of 1 second metrics available to you. So you don't have to ask someone, could you recreate the steps that you did? No, you're going to actually have a snapshot of what happened, in second by second fidelity for an incident. And then there's preset time ranges, 2-minute time window, or you can look at the last 10 days. So there's presets here, but the cool thing is you can look at the spikes down here at the bottom, and there's a slider so that you can zero into the exact time of a particular incident that you're troubleshooting. All the relevant sources for each dashboard display by default and are populated for each of the dashboards you start, but sometimes you might want to filter that down. So there's a filter capability. You can filter by host, and you can set up groups of hosts so that you can have dashboards for your East Coast region hosts or something like that, West Coast, something that you could do a geographic or functional filtering. Just as an example, here's a filter of my desktop, so my CPU. So I just filtered on my host. So now we have just a single line that shows the metrics for my host. In addition to the out-of-the-box dashboards, of course, you can quickly create custom dashboards. It's a drag and drop ability with the metrics on the left, and then you can just drag and drop them into the panels. And the neat thing about this as well is that you can, once you design one of these dashboards, then you can create, or it'll give you the iframe HTML, so you can copy and paste that and share that with other folks who might want to have in their own environment on an HTML page, and we'll show you that in the demo. So for alarms and actions, you will see visually that there's going to be an alarm with the little alarm bell here, and then once that occurs and they're triggered by thresholds, you can associate them with what are called actions. And these actions, as we mentioned, are like the email notification or the integration with the collaborative tools like HipChat and OpsGenie. Here's the default view of an alarm message. It gives you the information as well as the link right to the incident. This is really cool. So if you look at this, you click on that link, and then you end up with a table that provides you the threshold violation in context of the other metrics that you're collecting, as well as the other infrastructure at the time of the incident. Here's a view of the OpsGenie sort of dashboard of alerts. So you can see that several alerts have been sent with a solution like that. You can quickly prioritize and assign the alert to someone on your team. You can acknowledge the alert. You can also customize how you want people to be informed, whether it's emails, texts, or phone calls to other folks on your team. Now let's talk just about briefly about the plugins here. So you can add plugins, one or more plugins to any of the meters. And here we see a list of the available plugins, and you can monitor then specific technologies, or these can also be used as like an active agent for REST API calls. And this one here is just a view of, the idea that you can embed an iframe in other HTML. So when you're designing your dashboard, you just copy and paste the iframe and put it into your web page. And then lastly, there is an awesome set of API documents or documentation on the API where you can view how to customize the plugins, metrics, and much more. And you can see that the link is right here, and it's pretty straightforward. They give you examples and links to how to do it. All right, so use case 2 is the comprehensive AWS monitoring. Very simple to get started. What you do is in AWS, you create the user and you have an access key. You create a group that has assigned a role with this CloudWatch read-only access rule. And then you do the handshake with TrueSight Pulse with the access key in TrueSight Pulse. And it's very simple steps to do that. So now we're going to jump into a quick demo here. All right, so in this, we see this out of the box server health. And what this shows is, we have all the relevant hosts running, and we can see the CPU and the metrics for each of the hosts that's part of this dashboard. And then you might say, well, this is great, but I don't know if I want to have like all these panels. Maybe I just want maybe 4 or 5 of these instead of 9. So what you can do is there's the dashboard designer. You just click here, this little settings widget, click on dashboards, and then you'll see that there are any number of dashboards available, based on what you have integrated with your installation. And then you can enable them, delete them, manage them, and change them. And so what we're going to do is just add a dashboard. So I'll click Add Dashboard, and this dashboard designer comes up, and you see that the metrics available here on the left, and then we have this designer panels on the right. So what I'm going to do is just to illustrate this, we'll put the CPU metric here, and note that you can have different size panels. So I just expanded that metric across 2 panels. So CPU is going to take up just, a little more real estate here. And then the other thing that's kind of cool is if you have 2 metrics that you want to display on one panel. So we'll click this here, and it says data in and data out. We just want to go ahead and show them both on the same panel, right? Let's just add a few more metrics, real simple system, and then let me grab my favorite one down here. This is my favorite one from a plugin, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, which is this the HTTP response time. So I'm going to click this here, and then we'll also note that you could add more columns or rows as needed. So I'm going to label this true. Oops. And I'll just say this, and you could make that the default dashboard if you wanted to. So we're going to save this, and here we have the streaming data coming right away, and we can see the CPU, and then we can see the 2 metrics on one panel over here, and these other metrics, and then my favorite, response time. Just to give you a little background, this response time for Cash Now is basically simulating an application that it's a web-based application where a customer goes to a car dealership, gets approval for instant credit, and this app would be able to transfer money directly from that user's bank account to put a down payment right into the account for the car dealer. So we're simulating the HTTP response times for different components in that application. And I'm going to show you just briefly how to do something like that, and that would be with plugins. So to understand the architecture of the plugins with each solution, when you click on the plugins link here, you see the available plugins that you have that you could associate with any one of your meters. So that just means these 2 plugins here are available, the HTTP check and ping check, But there are many other plugins that are supported here that you can install and then associate with any number of meters that you have, as well as you could develop your own plugins. So let's just take a look at our meters. So we can, each meter can have one or more plugins. So we have a set of meters here. And if we look at, let's look at this one. This one is associated with that HTTP check plugin that I was talking about, or I could add the ping one to this meter, or I could install from that set and then associate with this. Let's just take a look at this. So this plugin, provides a description of the prerequisites, and many of them require this Node.js environment. That's very simple to install as well on your instance. Amazon actually has a very complete instance available that's very easy to install Node.js. All right, so let's just see how this is configured. So I click Next, and I see that there's a couple of endpoints already. The idea of our Engage conference is coming up, or maybe it's the login page. All right, so I'm going to add an endpoint, and let's say this is the checkout. So it could be like, it's a website and you're about ready to check out, and that we all know that we're on a website and we're about ready to buy something and we check out, and if it gets hung, we don't know if we had to pay for it or not. To put in a site that I know. Okay, and that'll be our checkout URL. Now you can use HTTP or HTTPS, and you can also, which is really cool, with this plugin, you can check the response time for REST API calls that are associated with any application you have. So it doesn't have to be a URL endpoint. So you can have pretty comprehensive coverage of what's going on in the back end of an application with monitoring the HTTP request to services, the REST API. All right, so that's how we get started with one of those plugins, and that'll eventually populate up here. And there it is. So now, analogous to plugins, let's take a look at alarms. So if we look at the alarms, it's a similar architecture. So we have the alarms here, right? And several of them for the system metrics come out of the box, but you can add more alarms and you can add thresholds to these alarms. So let's take a look at this one. And now this one is associated with 2 actions. So let's think of the actions like similar to the plugins. You can have one or more actions associated with a particular alarm. So we can see that here. We can set the threshold on this alarm. And now let's go back and look at the actions that are available to associate with each alarm. So if I look at this, I see, okay, we've got the email support default. We've got an integration with Ops Genie. And this one is the add more CPU URL. So you could set up an alarm that posts to an event management system that tells that operator that they need to add more CPU to a particular set of infrastructure that you're monitoring. All right, and we could add more actions to associate with the alarms just like we could with the plugins. Okay, so now let's finish this up with just showing you how to share content. So this little common share symbol here, you can share these dashboards with just the link. This provides directly the link. And then the other way to do this is to share, we mentioned before, to share the embedded iframe. So what this does is actually brings up the dashboard designer. So I click embed dashboard here, and now it sees embed graph is written up here. And it sort of gives you a start, and then you can add or modify this iframe. So we can modify this, and then it's populated in this iframe here. Okay, so let's narrow this down to 2 columns, something like that. Again, you can specify the light theme, and then what you do is you just copy the iframe here and paste it into an HTML page that you manage or you host. And I have a quick example. I create an iframe of one of these dashboards and I put it on a separate HTML. So here it is. So this is live streaming data from an iframe that I just copy and pasted into this HTML. If I click here and choose view page source, we can see this little iframe here, and that was generated by TrueSight Pulse. So that's concluding our demo, and thank you very much for having a look at this, and we look forward to many of you using TrueSight Pulse to get the heartbeat of your digital enterprise management solutions.